The show is in progress.
There's a lot of conversation out there, to say the least, about this virus, about what we should be doing about it, where it came from. I'm sure by now you know all the questions. Would you introduce yourself, give us a little bit of your background, and then let's talk about this virus for as long as you want, sir.
Sure, sure. It's great meeting you guys. My name is Dr. Luther Virgil. I'm an internal medicine physician with a subspecialty in infectious diseases. Howard University trained. I always like to throw that in there. And I have spent a long time addressing illnesses. And I've seen more than I expected in a number of illnesses that have created a large footprint in our community. I dealt with the HIV epidemic, have dealt a little with some of the anthrax issues, the diseases, which, some of the viruses such as the flu and those influenza type things. I have served as the CEO of the National Minority Clinical Research Association, an organization which dealt with research aimed at the minority population. I have worked on clinical trials for different types of medications as it relates to types of infections. I have helped to work and deal with issues such as Ebola virus infection, work with some of the individuals in the CDC and NIH that you have seen that have been addressing this disease.
Well, we want to thank you. Your background, impressive. You came to us through an impressive person with a background. But you know what everybody in the country is talking about, sir.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about this coronavirus. And I remember at the beginning there were a lot of jokes. I'm imagining now those jokes are fading off. What is the one thing, sir, you believe above everything else right now at the very outset of this we need to know?
Okay, so there's a lot of information out there. And it's very important for us to actually get the proper information. So if you ask me what's the most important thing to know, I would say to you, getting the proper information. There's a lot of false stuff out there. There were some arrests that happened just this week of individuals who were selling products to cure coronavirus. We've seen information has come from individuals who are supposed to be in leadership roles that when I watched the information coming out their mouths, I cringed because I recognized that there was a large percentage of the population that was going to actually pay attention to that information and therefore be misled. So getting the right information to me is the very first on the list of things that we have to do in order to address what's going on right now. That's the most important thing. And that's why I'm here today. And I'm very appreciative of you all asking me to join you. I have been attempting to do this as much as I possibly can. And having situations like yours whereby individuals can get the proper type of information is just very, very important.
Well, I am no doctor. I'm not even going to pretend that I know every question I ought to ask you. So I think what we can best do, we do have some questions we've thought about, but I'd like you to just kind of walk us through this thing. And as you walk us through, if we can ask you a couple questions, or if you feel there's something you need to highlight, let's do that, because this is too important to leave to people who don't know what to ask. We're just kind of here wanting to receive. So lead the way, sir.
Okay, sure. One of the first things that I generally do is talk to individuals about what coronavirus is and how it started. Because, this is something before Christmas, no one was even talking about.
No.
And before Christmas, we mostly didn't even know anything about it. No one could even predict this was going to happen. So let's talk about and answer that first question. What is coronavirus and how did it start? So coronavirus, and the word virus means a very small living thing that in order to survive, what it does is it infects the cells of a larger organism. So for us, it's a small living entity that gets inside our cells, and it gets inside our cells to survive and reproduce. That's basically what a virus wants to do. It wants to do like us. It wants to live its life cycle, and reproduce. And it needs a host cell, not necessarily a human, but a host cell in order to do that. This coronavirus is part of a large family. We've known about coronaviruses. You may hear people say the word COVID-19 or refer to it as COVID-19. Well, that 19 is important because it is the 19th coronavirus. So COVID stands for corona, vid is virus infection. D is disease, number 19. So therefore, it indicates that we know about coronaviruses. Coronaviruses as a family generally infect animals and people, but primarily animals and things like camels, cattle, and you hear about bats here recently. And we don't necessarily worry about these coronaviruses until they spread from animal to people. And then it can and also have the capability of doing people to people. That's very rare. Most coronaviruses might spread animal to animal, animal to people, but to have the double whammy of spreading animal to people and then being able to be spread person to person, that's what makes it a little more serious. We've heard of the disease SARS before, the SARS virus. That was a coronavirus. And MERS, which is a coronavirus. So we've had experience with these coronaviruses. This coronavirus more than likely spread from bats as a reservoir. And we get that information from studying some of the materials that have come out of China and looking at the issue of that when they look at the genetic breakdown of the virus itself, we find it is almost exactly the same as the virus particle that has been seen in China. Generally, over time, mutations will occur, just like in anything. And so therefore, a virus will show its age. Since there are very few mutations that can be identified, it tells us that this is a new virus. And this virus first came about in the market area where the first outbreaks were seen in Wuhan, China. So that's pretty much what the SARS virus is. It's responsible for a respiratory type disease. And you've heard that we've used the term SARS. It means severe acute respiratory syndrome. So the main disease that it caused is something in the respiratory tract, in our lungs, and it affects our breathing. The first identification of it, which is actually officially stated, is somewhere around December. And then in January, the very end of January, about January 30th, the World Health Organization declared SARS as a public health emergency. And on January 31st, the United States also declared it a national emergency. By March 11th, a few days ago, about 5 days ago, the World Health Organization declared it a pandemic. And then about 3 days ago, the United States claimed it to be a pandemic and a national emergency also. So that's where SARS where coronavirus probably got its start and what coronavirus really is.
Well, you say where it came from, how it started, how bad. I'm gonna jump down here and then we'll fill in the rest. How bad is it going to get?
Okay, so if I were to, all of the things that I say to you now are supposition, but it's an educated guess. Because as I said before, we've dealt with things like the Spanish flu. We've dealt with things like influenza itself. We've dealt with other coronaviruses. So we can start to put together some information. Also of note, what you might hear is this. When we as scientists begin to look at the data and start to identify what we can get from that investigation of the data, we've come to recognize that this coronavirus infection or coronavirus disease has a pattern, and that pattern seems to be similar in China and in some of the European countries. And the pattern that America is closely following is the pattern in Italy. So that's unfortunate in one way, because as you all probably are aware, it's really bad in Italy. In fact, Italy had to they've closed Italy down. Essentially, if you're out walking the streets in Italy, you'll get a ticket. If you're caught again, you can be arrested. If you don't listen to what the military says or the police say, you will be arrested. Well, so essentially, if you ask the question how bad it is, my educated guess is this, that over the next several months, 3 to 6 months, just about every single person in the United States will be affected by the coronavirus. And a large percentage of them, more than half the people in the United States will probably be exposed to coronavirus. That's my guess. Could be even higher.
Wow.
And we'll talk a little bit later about why that might be. The good thing is that not every single person is going to get a severe disease from the coronavirus infection.
Okay.
But the bad thing about it is that I think that the coronavirus is going to affect our lives in such a way that there'll be changes. I don't think we'll ever be the same as a country.
You're talking about changes like the changes we are now experiencing, such as 9/11?
Sure. Yes. Yes. I definitely do. I believe that, for example, handshaking, something we've done for pretty much all our lives, something that you being from the military has been, me as a black man raised by a father who was in the military for 23 years. He always said, give a good, strong handshake and let a person recognize who you are. Things like this may actually change. We may see more and more people doing passive ways of greeting rather than just a handshake.
I don't make light of this subject because it shouldn't be, but they say we started the head nod, and I'm at the point now where when I pass you, I'm gonna throw a head nod to you and keep it moving.
Thank you for listening to Success in the Evening with Coach Ricky Terry. We're now returning with some Q&A from my flight crew members.
So my question is, I had a friend talk to me about this. Of course, we're all educators.
Sure.
And her question was, can this virus be airborne without contracting it from someone else? And isn't this like catching the flu?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the question is, can it be airborne without catching it from someone else? I'm going to assume something here. And then the second part of your question was, can it be like the flu? So the easiest part of it is, yes, it is like the flu. It is definitely like the flu, but there's some differences. And when we say it's like the flu, that means that we have a lot of things that we can describe. We can describe, is the transmission like the flu? We can describe, are the symptoms like the flu? We can describe, does it last as long as the flu? And so those are a lot of things we can say. But in general, it is like the flu in many of those things. And so since she was talking about, can you catch it? Is it airborne? And can you catch it from someone else? But so the main way that this virus is spread is through air. It's spread through what we call droplet nuclei. There is moisture in our mouth and our noses. All of our mouths and noses all have to stay moist. The virus gets in that area and gets in that liquid. And when we cough or sneeze or talk, and sometimes, we talk and unfortunately it's a little spit, as we call it, comes out. The virus particles are then located in this and they travel with it. In many instances, when we cough or sneeze, we sneeze and land on a person and it goes right in their mouth or their nose. Many times we don't even know that. And if we do sneeze and it lands on a surface, it can stay on that surface for a while. And if someone comes up behind them and touches that surface and places their hand to their face, then they also can transmit it. It's usually transmitted through our mouth, nose, eyes areas from an amount of virus that's in some type of moisture that we touch to our hands or to our face usually. It is amazing how many times we touch our face in a day. It's amazing. We don't even pay attention to it. It just becomes normal. You know how many people suck their thumb? Yeah. I mean, there are lots of different ways. So that would be how I'd answer that person. Yes, it can be transferred airborne. It is not a natural air flyer. It's usually transferred in the moisture that comes from a person who has been infected with the virus.
So that goes back to that. It started out being 3 feet apart the first time I heard it on the news here locally. Mm-hmm. Then it went to 6 feet.
6 feet apart.
Now Correct. Are we at an even farther? Now we're at, what is it? Social
distancing. Social distancing is a better way of actually addressing that situation where we stand apart from each other. And the isolation is something a little bit different, and we can talk about that if you want to, but the social distancing is about 6 feet. And that's to allow for the natural, we measure a lot of things, but now for the natural arc and fall of the droplet nuclei from a person who sneezes. Some sneezes are more forceful than others, but the studies show that more than likely, if you're 6 feet apart, then you will not receive the droplet nuclei, especially not in the facial area.
You had a follow-up, bro?
I do. When we talk about moisture and it transmits through our mouths and our nose and our eyes, how does liquid or water play a part in that? Because if you're drinking a lot of liquids and water, some people have this notion, and I want to be clear about this, that if you're drinking a lot of water and stuff, and if it does get in your mouth, in its moisture. But if you drink a lot of liquids, it goes into your stomach and the acid will kill it.
Okay, absolutely. There is it's amazing. Someone has created an email post and has transmitted it through Facebook and those things. And that is totally incorrect to say that you will not get it by drinking a lot of water. And please excuse me, the phone is ringing. There are a number of people are trying to reach me, but you have my time, so I apologize for that. But that is not something that you should pay attention to. Remember I talked to you about a virus going into a cell?
Yes.
Well, that's your cell. When you drink water, you're not going to wash away all of your inner jaw. You're not going to wash away all of it. So you're not going to get rid of that virus. When you sneeze, that virus is inside. It's small enough to pass through your membranes, inside microscopic cells. So it's not about so it is not that the virus is going to be floating in the water. It's going to be floating in a combination of your cells and other parts of your body that are in that liquid.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. You answered my question.
Sure.
Definitely answered my question.
Sure.
All right. And Brother DePaul, I believe you had a question.
When you make copies of certain things, after a while it diminishes. You know, the original copy doesn't look like the follow-up copy. Why is this virus continue to be what it is, being as it started from China and now it's here? Why are we still seeing the same thing?
Man, that's a fantastic question, by the way. And I'm just so happy to hear that you put it in that kind of way.
Could you repeat that?
No. Go ahead and answer the question. Don't. He's supposed to be with us, man.
I'm sure you all will pay for that statement later. But remember, I'm not going to be around when you pay for that statement. So.
Look, you have no idea what you just did to us.
And I will tell you why that is. That was one of the biggest issues that we had to deal with when we were dealing with HIV disease. With HIV disease, what would happen is, and I'm going to flip this back to the coronavirus, because HIV was a virus, a retrovirus. And what would happen is that over time, the HIV virus might mutate. And that is, every time it made a copy of itself, eventually something's going to make an error. We see that in human life. We see that in individuals with Down syndrome or individuals with other genetic illnesses or genetic malformations. They are, if you would, and if you assume that the ones without that are a normal being, they are differences that have happened, and they are differences in the copying mechanism. And to make it simple, again, as I explained to you about this coronavirus, it's new. You will hear the word novel being used. It's so new. I would say to you that 5 years from now, coronavirus will still be here, but we might be getting a vaccination that has 3 different coronavirus species in it that make you immune to that. When you get a flu vaccine, the flu vaccine is composed of a number of particular flu strains that the science helps us predict what flu we expect to occur in this particular year. We don't give you a shot that has every flu strain that we know of and every vaccine to that. We actually calculate. Many years, we hit it right on the nose. This year was a very good one, and they nailed it very well. Some years, you get flu vaccines, and they don't work as well. They work better than nothing, but they don't work as well because we did not necessarily get the right strains based on our calculations. In some instances, they have to give you a supplemental shot. Now, to answer your question, we just started this virus. I expect there to be some mutations to occur. One of the way mutations occur is by pressure. There's pressure on that virus to survive. As in when we work with HIV, when the virus was not being put in the presence of a drug to treat it, the virus didn't mutate that much. But once we gave it a drug that treated it, but that drug wasn't strong enough to truly obliterate the virus would work such that the ones that were resistant to that drug, they would survive while the virus species that were not resistant to the drug would die. And then very quickly, you have a mutated virus that's composed mostly of individual strains that are resistant to the medicine. That may happen with the coronavirus once we start actually treating it.
Wow.
You're listening to Success in the Evening with Coach Ricky Terry, with special guest Dr. Luther Virgil, infectious disease specialist. Please join us on podcast at Success in the Evening with Coach Ricky Terry. Visit our Instagram at OneDueNorth_LLC or our Facebook and Twitter at Success in the Evening with Coach Ricky Terry. And remember to join us on the web at OneDueNorth.com. That's the number one, DueNorth.com.